Hi, my name is Nikon, and in this video I'm going to teach you my method of how to VOD review efficiently. I'm going to be approaching this guide with the context of Super Smash Bros., but this guide is also helpful for other facets you want to apply this to. The main things you really need for VOD reviewing are the VOD that you're reviewing in the first place, and then some sort of notepads to take notes on. I like to use an iPad because that's just what I'm more used to, but you can use whatever you're comfortable with. I would also recommend having matchup notes that you can check to give yourself more ideas on what you should be looking for or what you should be doing better, but that's not required. A few things to talk about before is that to be watching film sometimes means watching yourself make mistakes. Make sure to have some separation between you watching the film and the you on the film. Just because you see yourself make a mistake doesn't mean you are bad. Also, you may make the same mistake later that you study in the film. That's okay. Habits take a while to fix. The best thing you can do is keep practicing and work on fixing it. You might also not get all the answers you're looking for, and that's okay. The main point is to give you some areas to improve on and ideas for you to test out on your own and see their viability. Alright, now onto the concept of studying film. I like to separate the concept of film review into 3 different types: studying your opponent, studying you, and studying others. For studying your opponent, I like to look out for my opponent's habits, and then I try to think of possible counters to those specific habits. When VOD reviewing your opponent, it doesn't have to specifically be a video of the opponent against you, but in this case I'll be showing an example of where it is, just because it's easier to explain. For instance, in this clip right here, I noticed that my opponent likes to recover with neutral getup or aerial attack / down B when I telegraph an attack, or I try to apply pressure to him. To make it easier for me to read over my notes later, I like to mark my opponent's habits with a red color. My possible counterplay in this scenario would instead be to fake pressure on ledge and then jump back to stage, baiting the attack from ledge and then punishing that. To make it easier for me to read later, I like to write down possible counterplays in blue. Another example is when he's recovering, I noticed that instead of trying to hit me, he ends up trying to throw out a move early in order to try and hit me so he can recover easier. Possible counterplay to this would be to pull back a little to bait out this attack and then hit him off stage. Another counterplay could be to space out my attacks better so that I don't put myself in harm's way by fully drifting in and putting my hitbox into his attack. Try to think of at least 2 possible counters to each habit that you see. That way you can either mix up your counters, or if one doesn't work, maybe the other one will. That's not super necessary, but I think it's just better to give yourself more options, just in case. For studying yourself, this can be used for seeing where options that you chose were good, or to see places where you might have been better off choosing a different option. Using a different VOD as an example, I noticed a lot of times in this set, I was trying to approach using my aerials, trying to forcibly push my opponent away in order to create more room for me to land. Instead, in this scenario, what I could have done was jump away from my opponent and occupy the other side of the stage that my opponent was letting me have. Or if I just waited a little longer, I could have landed on the platforms that were moving away and rethought my strategy and approach to be better than it was at the time. For reviewing someone else, I find it most helpful to go into it looking for something and then pick apart the options they took and then why they took them. For example, in my sets versus Pokemon Trainer, I sometimes find it hard to edgeguard Charizard when they're recovering low. Sometimes I wait on ledge and try to punish their get-up options. So I decided to review a Puff to see what they would do to edgeguard Charizard low. For reviewing, I decided to review this Puff called Jin, facing a Pokemon Trainer called No Colors. I did that because both the Puff player and the Pokemon Trainer are regarded as fairly good players of their characters, and it would be better for me to get higher level experience. For simplicity's sake in this video, I'm just talking about one interaction, but I would recommend looking through a whole video to see if the player that you're reviewing changes their approach throughout the game and how this changes the results that they receive. When edgeguarding Charizard low, they would run off the stage, fast fall, and then do a rising dare in order to avoid the hitbox from Charizard's up B, while still hitting the Charizard out of their move. When that happens, Puff seems to be sent at a sideways angle, and so he then goes to do a pound as he's unable to get above the up B and then punishes from the side. So yeah, that's how I VOD review. And then when I go out to practice, I make sure to read these notes beforehand so I know what stuff to test out in practice. I also make sure to read these notes before I get into my set to make sure that I know what to look for and what to capitalize on. Sometimes it's as simple as looking at the outlines of habits before I have that on my phone for a lot of players. But sometimes it's also good to write down specific counterplays or specific pathways that you know you want to take in the set. So for example, if I know that my opponent likes to shield a lot, from VOD Review, I'll just write down, make sure to grab a lot more than usual. And I'll have that in my head before I get into my set. And you can see the results here for how this helped me with these different matchups that I've went over in this video for these different players. I hope that this video helped. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them in the comments or in my Discord server. That's in the description. Thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best. Good luck.